If you lived in California in the 1990s, you experienced a decade that seemed like the future was arriving early. Tech millionaires were being created overnight. Earthquakes rattled the state. Riots shook Los Angeles, and California culture dominated everything from music to movies to technology. Dot-com startups were making people rich. Blockbuster Video was on every corner. Pagers were giving way to cell phones. The Northridge earthquake collapsed freeways. The OJ trial was on every television. And West Coast hip-hop defined the sound of the decade. Housing was getting expensive, and traffic was getting worse, but opportunity felt like it was everywhere. Let's step back into that world. The dot-com boom transformed Silicon Valley and the entire Bay Area in the 1990s. Companies like Netscape, Yahoo, and Google in the late 1990s were launching and creating wealth at a pace nobody had seen before. Initial public offerings were making instant millionaires out of engineers and secretaries who had stock options. Young people fresh out of Stanford were getting rich. Office parks in the South Bay and Peninsula filled with startups. The internet was arriving in homes through dial-up modems. AOL sent compact discs in the mail constantly. You've Got Mail became part of daily vocabulary. Tech workers were everywhere in the Bay Area. Housing prices in San Francisco, Palo Alto, and Mountain View skyrocketed. Traffic on Highway 1, 01, and 280 got worse as more people moved to the area. Stanford graduates stayed local instead of leaving for other opportunities. Venture capital culture emerged. Everyone seemed to have a startup idea or knew someone working at a company about to go public. But not everyone was benefiting. The divide between tech wealth and everyone else was growing. Service workers, teachers, and longtime residents were being priced out. April 1992. Changed Los Angeles. The Rodney King verdict sparked riots that burned through South Central Los Angeles. 63 people died. Thousands of buildings were damaged or destroyed. Korean-owned businesses were targeted. People across the country watched it unfold on television. The National Guard was deployed. The tension that had been building for years exploded. Rooftop Koreans defended their businesses with rifles. The chant, "No justice, no peace," became the rallying cry. The riots changed how people saw Los Angeles and exposed the racial and economic divisions that existed. Recovery took years. Neighborhoods rebuilt slowly. The scars remained. Natural disasters shaped the 1990s in California. The Northridge earthquake in January 1994 struck at 4:30 in the morning, with a magnitude of 6.7. Freeways collapsed. Buildings crumbled. People woke up to violent shaking and no power or water. The damage was extensive across the San Fernando Valley and beyond. Communities came together to help each other. The Oakland Hills fire in 1991 destroyed thousands of homes. Wildfires became a summer reality. Earthquake preparedness drills became routine in schools. Families kept emergency kits in cars and homes. Living in California meant accepting that the ground could shake at any moment, or that fires could threaten your neighborhood. But people stayed. The risks were part of the deal. The O.J. Simpson trial consumed California and the entire nation from 1994 to 1995. The white Bronco chase on Los Angeles freeways in June 1994 had everyone watching. The trial itself dominated news coverage for over a year. People watched the verdict at work, at school, in bars. The racial divide in reactions to the verdict was stark. The Los Angeles justice system was on display. You could not escape the trial. It was a cultural moment that defined mid-1990s California and revealed deep divisions. Northern California and Southern California had distinct identities that created a friendly rivalry. The Bay Area culture was different from Los Angeles culture in almost every way. Northern California had technology, liberal politics, fog, and a more laid-back attitude. Southern California had the entertainment industry, constant sunshine, beaches, and an endless network of freeways. The dividing line ran somewhere around Fresno. Sports rivalries reflected that divide. Different slang, different food scenes, different attitudes about what California meant. San Diego had its own identity, separate from Los Angeles. The Central Valley was often forgotten by both sides, but it was all still California, and everyone shared pride in the state. Before we continue with the music and culture that made California unforgettable in the 1990s, if you are enjoying this look back at what the state was really like and want to explore more decades and places, consider subscribing. There are so many more stories about how Americans lived through the times that shaped us. West Coast hip-hop dominated music in the 1990s. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, and Ice Cube were defining the sound. The Chronic in 1992 and Doggy Style in 1993 were everywhere. Death Row Records was the label everyone knew. The West Coast versus East Coast rivalry became real and eventually tragic. Tupac's death in 1996 devastated California. But California music was not just hip-hop. Alternative rock thrived with bands like No Doubt, Sublime, and Red Hot Chili Peppers. KROQ in LA was the radio station that mattered. MTV played everything. CD players in cars replaced cassette decks. Tower Records was a destination where you spent hours browsing. Beach culture remained central to California's identity, but it was evolving. Surfing was still part of the lifestyle, but extreme sports were rising. The X Games started in 1995, and suddenly skateboarding, BMX, and inline skating were mainstream. Tony Hawk became a household name. Mountain biking in Marin County drew enthusiasts. Rollerblading was everywhere in the 90s. Venice Beach remained weird and wonderful, with bodybuilders, street performers, and artists. Santa Monica Pier and Huntington Beach attracted crowds. Wetsuit technology improved, making year-round surfing more comfortable. Brands like Vans and Airwalk came from California skate culture and went national. Coffee culture exploded in California during the 1990s. Starbucks spread from Seattle through California cities, and coffee became a social activity rather than just a morning routine. Malls were at their peak. South Coast Plaza, Fashion Island, and the Grove attracted shoppers. Blockbuster Video had locations in every neighborhood. Friday nights meant renting movies. Fry's Electronics was where tech enthusiasts went. Tower Records sold music. The Gap and Old Navy were spreading. Independent video stores still existed alongside the chains. Retail was thriving. Television in the 1990s reflected California culture back to the world. Shows set in California dominated. Beverly Hills 90210 made Ella high school life look glamorous. Saved by the Bell was filmed at NBC in Burbank. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air showcased another version of LA. Friends was set in New York, but filmed in Burbank. Baywatch made California beaches famous globally, even though the lifeguard drama was ridiculous. California was setting trends that the rest of the country followed. Fashion in California in the 1990s was casual but distinct. Flannel shirts from the grunge era, baggy jeans, Doc Martens, and later cargo pants were common. In Southern California, beachwear influenced daily style, with tank tops, shorts, and sandals year-round. Brand names mattered. Tommy Hilfiger, Fubu, and skate brands were status symbols for teenagers. Food culture in California continued to innovate. In-N-Out Burger was expanding, but still felt like a California secret. The menu was simple. The burgers were fresh, and getting animal style made you feel like an insider. Mexican food was everywhere and authentic, with taco trucks before they became trendy. Asian fusion restaurants were emerging. California rolls had already changed sushi in America. Farmers markets were growing in popularity. Whole Foods opened stores in California. The farm-to-table movement that started in the 1970s was going mainstream. California cuisine was becoming recognized nationally. Technology was arriving in daily life gradually through the 1990s. Pagers came first. Everyone seemed to have a beeper. Then, cell phones appeared. But early cell phones were bulky and expensive. Only some people had them. Car phones in luxury vehicles were a status symbol. Dial-up internet arrived at home. AOL compact discs showed up in the mail constantly. Email became normal for work. Instant Messenger connected teenagers. But there were no smartphones. No GPS. Thomas Guide map books sat in every car. Payphones were still on every corner. Answering machines at home recorded messages. You watched technology arrive, piece by piece. Car culture remained fundamental to California life. Traffic was bad in Los Angeles and getting worse in the Bay Area, but cars were still freedom. Japanese cars dominated. Hondas and Toyotas were reliable and affordable. Sport utility vehicles started becoming popular in the late 1990s. Lowriders in East Los Angeles and the Central Valley represented Chicano culture. The Fast and the Furious car culture was building in the Los Angeles street racing scene, though the movie would not come until 2001. You spent significant time in your car commuting, and that car said something about who you were. Housing affordability was declining fast in the 1990s. Home prices rose throughout the decade. The Bay Area became especially expensive as tech money drove up costs. Young families were priced out of San Francisco and moved to the East Bay or the South Bay. Los Angeles housing costs climbed, but it was still more affordable than it would become. Middle-class families could still buy homes. Proposition 13 kept property taxes low for longtime owners. The California dream of homeownership was getting harder to achieve. People started leaving for Nevada, Oregon, and Arizona, where housing was cheaper. Immigration and demographic changes reshaped California. Proposition 187 in 1994, a divisive immigration measure, sparked heated debates. The Hispanic population grew significantly, and Asian communities expanded. Ethnic enclaves existed in every major city, and different languages were heard everywhere. Food culture benefited from the diversity, with authentic restaurants representing cuisines from around the world. Political tensions around immigration were real. California was becoming a majority-minority state, and the state's identity was changing. California in the 1990s was a decade of transformation. The tech boom, earthquakes, riots, trials, and cultural dominance all happened at once. California was still the place everyone wanted to be. Music, movies, and technology all came from California. Housing was expensive, but not impossible yet. Traffic was bad, but not constant gridlock. For those who lived through it, the 1990s felt like California's moment. The future was arriving in real time. Optimism mixed with real challenges. Earthquakes reminded everyone that nature was in charge. Economic divisions were growing. But California still felt like the center of everything happening in America.